Wait, just going to wait a minute until we're live. I hope everyone can see and it's clear. Bezrat Hashem, there's a couple things I want to talk with all of you about today, and I hope that it will be something that you'll find valuable in these difficult times. Now, if each and every one of us is sitting at home with our families, and it's a stressful time, and we're trying to figure out what to do with the kids, and we're trying to figure out how to stay safe, there's a million and one things that are going through our brains, trying to protect ourselves. But one of the things that I've noticed about human beings in any of their interactions is that when human beings are good, when we're okay up here, we're okay everywhere else. So although, I might not feel like I'm safe, I might not feel like, I have the situation under control, I might not feel like I know what's going to be with my business, but if I can feel okay up here, and if I can feel okay in here, then somehow, suddenly, it creates a very different dynamic for the way I interact with those around me. And I think maybe more than anything else, the spiritual realm of a person is responsible for that feeling. If someone feels, as an example, that things are not fair, there's nothing worse for a kid, for a child, than to feel that, it's not fair. How come he did it? I didn't get it. He did get it. Kids go crazy. It bothers them so much that something is not fair. Now, if you could explain to a child why that thing that they think isn't fair is actually fair, suddenly they're like, oh, okay, I guess it is fair, and when that happens, then they find themselves in a very different place with regards to the problems that they're facing. So I don't want to talk about why this is happening, because I think that is a moot point. Partially because it is impossible for anyone to claim knowledge of why this is happening. And I read the most beautiful line today. I don't actually remember who read it. I mean, you guys are suffering from this as well. There's like amnesia, because as like the stream of WhatsApps come in, when someone says something that's valuable, like you don't remember anymore who it was that said that thing that you really appreciate. You have to scroll through 75,000 messages. It's very difficult. But I read something very, very beautiful. And the point that he made, whoever this person was that when people are trying to decide why Hashem is doing this, you know what they wind up doing? They just refer back to whatever list they previously made of what was wrong with society. And then they just decide, and this is why Hashem is doing it. So it depends on what camp you're from. Like some people will say, Hashem is doing it because of shaitels. Hashem is doing it because of Instagram. Hashem is doing it because of Chol of Yisrael, right? There's a million and one reasons. Everyone is going to say something that kind of was previously on their list. And if it's not on their list, so it's just the next thing down the line. So I think the issue of deciding why God is doing it is moot. But I do want to point out something very powerful. I would like to encourage all of you, by the way, aside from this shiur when you're inside and listening to it live, get outside. There's no reason why you have to stay inside, unless you're obviously, if you're under quarantine. I understand why you have to stay inside. Excuse me. I'm just gonna open a window here. Yeah, if you're inside because of quarantine, you have to stay inside. But if you're not inside because of quarantine, if you're inside for any other reason, get outside. Just keep distance between you and other people. So I did the same thing. I took my little daughter. We're walking outside, and one of the interesting things that happens with little children when you're walking is that they have a million and one questions. I don't know if you've ever experienced that. So we're walking down the road, and my daughter asked me, she goes, "How come there's lines in the sidewalk?" How come there's lines in the sidewalk? I don't know. Adults don't think of these things. Why are there lines in the sidewalk? My first reaction was, oh, that's because they put then I'm like, no, idiot, it's concrete. They just put it in. Then they make a line. They like engrave a line. What's the point? Why do they need these lines? Anyway, so I said, you know what? Actually, I don't know. And my daughter said, oh, she's 3, right? Oh. Ready? It's because we're in quarantine. Right? So many things are just because of the quarantine. So she thought this was also because of the quarantine. But it reminded me of an amazing story, which I think is really, really germane to our discussion for today. There's a young child walking with his father, and the child says to his father, "How come the sky is blue?" Father's not a very, scientific guy. He says, "I don't know, not sure." Anyway, they keep walking, and then the kid sees the sun come out from the clouds, and the father says, what's it called? The kid says, how come that sun? How come it's so shiny? Why is it? Father says, I don't know. And then they keep walking, and then the kid sees on the ground there's some ants walking, and they're lifting food as they go. And he says, how come the ants are doing it? And the father says, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know. The kid says to his dad, "Dad, does it annoy you that I'm asking questions?" And the father says, No, son. It's very important for you to ask questions. How else are you going to learn? Okay? Now, I remember reading this little joke, and I thought to myself, wow, that is unbelievable. Because this little joke of a thing, how else are you going to ask it? But you're not answering the questions. Just because you don't have answers to questions doesn't mean it is not a valuable thing to be asking those questions. I need you to understand that. Now, let me explain what that looks like. And before I do so, I want to say thank you to the online yeshiva and to Sparks and to Eitan Berlin for putting this together. It's very, very special that you guys are doing this. Hazaku Baruch. Now, listen, guys, let me explain. The Talmud in Nidarim, the Gemara says, Davar ze nish'al lachachamim v'laneviim v'lo pirshuhu, and they could not explain it. Ad shepirsho akadosh baruch hu be'atzmo. What are we talking about? The Beit HaMikdash was going to be destroyed, and they didn't know what was going on. Why were they suffering? Why was all this going to happen to them? How come people were dying? How come people were being driven into exile? What was happening? Why? Why is this happening? And they went to the rabbis. No answer. They didn't know. They went to the prophets. The prophets had no answer. Says the Gemara, Ad shepirsho hakadosh baruch hu be'atzmo, until God himself had to answer. The pasuk in Yirmiyah, the Gemara quotes, it says, Al ma avda haaretz, why is the land being destroyed? Vayomer Amonai, and Hashem said, Al ozvam et torati, because they left my Torah. Now, I'm not going to get into the answer of why Hashem said the destruction happened, because I don't think that that's necessarily relevant to our conversation. But I do want to point out one thing. Rav Shach Zatzal asked an unbelievable question. And it was one of my favorite questions of all time. He says, I don't understand. Hold on. Let's read the Gemara again. 1 second. Let's go back. They asked the rabbis didn't know. The wise men, they didn't know. Asked the prophets did not know. They didn't know what the people were doing wrong. They couldn't tell you what the people had done wrong and why they deserved to be punished. Until God himself had to say it was because of this. So ask Rav Shach, if the rabbis didn't know and the prophets didn't know, how could you punish the people? How are they supposed to know? If the rabbis didn't know and the prophets didn't know, is that not the most powerful question? And Rav Shach answers very succinctly. Rav Shach answers as follows. He answers like this. He said, it is true. It is true. The Chachamim did not know and the prophets did not know. But they, the people themselves, they knew. What? What does that mean? I don't even understand what that means. My friends, listen carefully. We all know that when the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, the reason why the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed was because of sinat chinam, because of baseless hatred. We're familiar with that idea. Everybody knows that, right? Now, I want to ask you a question. Do you think sinat chinam is a uniform thing? Is that something that you think is the same for everybody that experiences it? No, of course not. So you know what it means when Rav Shach explains that they themselves knew? They knew why the temple was being destroyed. They knew why they were being punished. It doesn't mean that they were able to play God themselves. It means Lev Yodea Marat Nafsho. Everybody knows their own heart. Everybody knows what they could be doing better. And if Sinat Chinam was the category, so for one person, it was the fact that he could not forgive a sibling over an inheritance. For somebody else, It was the fact that they didn't like that kind of a Jew. For somebody else, it was the fact that this guy's a yeshiva, black hat, white hat, who knows what kind of hat, doesn't make a difference. These things, they just divided themselves person by person in expression. But the idea, the colloquial, the category was something that had to be revealed. Once that was revealed, everybody knew what they could be doing better. You know, my friends, we have a great teaching in Judaism. And I think it's one of the most reassuring teachings as well. And it is that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu rewards or he punishes us, he rewards or punishes us, midah kineged midah, measure for measure. Why is that such an important teaching? Because number one, it tells us that God is not just hitting us for nothing. God is hitting us for a specific reason. He's hitting us to guide us somewhere. Much like a jockey is hitting the horse to guide the horse faster, to win a race, to get to a certain place. In either scenario, the point of doing it is supposed to be readily understandable. There is nothing more pointless than God punishing us or doing something for us that we cannot understand. Now, what that means is that if you're online and you're trying to listen to Shlomo Farhi tell you why this is happening, give up, it ain't happening. If you want to see a rabbi with a longer beard tell you why this is happening, give up, it ain't happening. They asked the Chachamim, they asked the Nevi'im did not know, but you know, I know how I could be better, and you know how you could be better. For each and every person, the answer, the message is going to be slightly different, but the category is different. And that's what I want to spend a couple of minutes breaking down together with you today, if that's okay. So I think there's something that sticks out here to me. There's something that maybe if you would to kind of dial the switch a bit, kind of twist the screw just a little bit, you'd hear it with me. And again, I can't read at the same time while I'm speaking, but maybe I can engage with the comments afterwards. Okay. I see and I hear and I feel one thing coming out of this more than anything else. And I call this the power of the unseen. That is what is happening right now. You walk out on the streets, and as you kind of try and keep your social distancing from the guy who's walking down the street next to you, right? You're kind of doing this, right? You don't know. You're just not sure where it is. You know, the other day I went to Dwayne Reed, and after I finished ringing up the things, the woman behind the counter, she goes, "Yeah, you have to push the button on the screen." I was like, "Push the button on the screen? Do you just want me to kill myself right here? Should I just put a gun to my head? I ain't touching the screen. So many people have touched the screen." The other day I was in an Uber, right? And I'm thinking, you know, as I get there, if the guy would like be really upset if I asked him to open the door for me. We're so terrified by that which we cannot see. And that is how it should be. That is how it should be. We're being primed for a world which looks a little bit different than the world that we are in, than the world that we are used to. We are being primed to see a world that is unseen, to understand that the value and the power of prayers, my prayer here can help someone over there. The Talmud says that when a person does a mitzvah, any mitzvah, he should always see himself as if he is half 50-50. If he does one mitzvah, he tilts the scale like this, and now that's it. He's a tzaddik. He tilts the scale to life. But then the Talmud says something else. And not only that, he should see the whole world as if it's 50-50. Mitzvot, averot, positives, negative, life, death. One mitzvah, machriya, he turns, he decides himself, vet kol ha'olam kulo lekav zechut. That one mitzvah that he did could be the thing that turned the whole game. You know, when the Gemara says that the temple was destroyed because of Bar Kamsa. 1 second, that makes no sense to me. Does that make any sense to you? Hold on. Everybody has to suffer because one guy threw somebody out of a party? Come on. The answer is, our Chachamim explained to us that it was indicative of the zeitgeist of the time. In a community within which someone could stand up and throw someone out and not worry about the person's feelings, if that could happen, the context that had been built, who built that context? Who built a city, a reaction? Who built a brain, a head that could tolerate the fact that someone could be humiliated publicly? Who could do that? All of us do that. All of us do that, each in our own way and each differently. Now, I might be nice to my family, but I might be horrible to others. Some people are really nice to others and they're horrible to their family. Everybody has to figure out where they are on that thing. But when Bar Kamsa came, he was one. But I always remember this Gemara when I think about Bar Kamsa. At the end of the day, he goes down in history as being, the Gemara says, the reason for the destruction of the temple. Akamsa ubar kamsa charav Yerushalayim. Do you hear that? One mitzvah, one act, one deed. Throws him out, temple's destroyed. That is the power of the unseen. Starting to learn to think that our deeds, our mitzvot, our thoughts, our desire sound like an important point. But I think it's very important, okay? There are some people in my community who did not grow up, keeping kosher. Some people do, some people don't. But some people have grown up not keeping kosher. That is, their background. And, the guy came to me and he said, look, Rabbi, it's very, very tough. I come to shul, I do a lot of these other things, but kosher restaurants, they just are not as good as the non-kosher restaurants. As a rabbi, I can never argue with someone on that. Yes, they are. How would you know, Rabbi? It's a problem. I don't know. I can't really argue, okay? But I don't think they are. I don't think it's a problem. I know that Izzy's won the best brisket, even from non-Jewish places. But, other than that, I don't really have that much data to throw back, okay? However, the person said to me, look, it's very, very tough. And I said to him, it's true. It's true. Kosher's a very tough thing for people to keep. But I'd like to ask, I'd like to ask you for one thing. I want you to think about this one thing next time you go out and you're choosing to eat kosher instead of not kosher. He said, okay. I said, I want you to think that of all the mitzvot in the Torah, there's only one mitzvah that the mitzvah itself, the sin, becomes a physical part of the person. He goes, what do you mean? I said, every other mitzvah, where do you do it? You shake the lulav, okay? What happens to the mitzvah that you did or didn't do? It's a spiritual thing that exists because you shook it. When you eat non-kosher food, the actual non-kosher food becomes a part of you. It gets broken down. It becomes muscle, tissue, fat. It becomes a part of you. He said, wow. I said, so I just want you to think next time you're struggling to go out, just ask, do I want to bring that sin? I want to bring that thing into me, or do I want to be strong this time? Maybe that's a way that you could kind of keep, your conviction to try and be kosher, even if it's so difficult. Guy came back to me after 2 weeks. He says, I went into a non-kosher restaurant the other day. He goes, I sat down, the food, I ordered everything. He goes, I sat down, I took my fork, I put it up to my mouth. He goes, I couldn't eat the food. I said, why? What happened? Did you think about it? He goes, all I could think about was this non-kosher, I forget which non-kosher food it was, some sort of seafood. He goes, I could just imagine it was like in my arm. It was like in my legs, right? Now, although with kosher, it's obvious because it's physically a part of you. This power of the unseen is true for all mitzvot. Because when a person asks, who am I? It's not just this. It's my consciousness. It's my brain. It's my soul. The mitzvot that I do, they become a part of me. Now, it's so interesting to think about the fact that this Gemara that tells us that a mitzvah that you do on the other side of the world could have a reverberating effect and impact the entire world. We're living to see the fact that someone put something in his mouth that he shouldn't have in China, has 6,000 people dead, and everyone sequestered in their homes across the entire globe. You see the giant interconnectedness of the world. How God, when he created this world, he created a humankind which was linked together. And when we are doing what we're supposed to be doing as Jews, when we're being Or Lagoyim, we're supposed to, in the same way that random guy in Wuhan is affecting you and I right now. This afternoon, I went downstairs and my son is sitting there by the computer and he's learning with his chumash. I took a picture of him. It was so cute. He was really engaged, really listening. It was very, very special to see him. And I know a lot of the kids are messing around in the Zoom classes and they have all the backgrounds and all these kind of things, and they're doing other things on the computer while they're supposed to be, in classes on whatever the case might be. But what I found is after a couple of days, we just got used to the new normal, and now the kids are actually engaged. And this is now our new reality, because on the other side of the world, somebody did something. That's the power of the unseen. That's the power of doing a mitzvah. That's the power of having emunah, of saying a prayer, of learning something in the morning. It's an amazing thing. And I'd like to maybe ask if we could look at this together through this lens. And then I'm going to leave you with this question, leave you with a question that I think communicates this idea. So we've got a question here. We don't know what the answer is, but we know that when God interacts with us, he interacts with us midah keneged midah. If there's something unseen that has power, then we are here in a situation where we are witnessing the power of the unseen. What is the power of the unseen for all of us? Now, Rav Noach Weinberg was very fond of quoting the pasuk where it talks about anger in the Torah. The lashon, or the expression for anger in the Torah, is always chara'af. It's the expanding of the nostrils. When we do that, when the nostrils flare, right? When someone gets angry, the eyebrows go up, the eyes go, right? Rav Noach was fond of asking, why is it that the expression for anger in the Torah is flared nostrils? That sounds so weird. Like, that's your description of anger? Yes, it is something that happens when you get angry. And Rav Noach said something that was piercing. He said the biggest problem with anger is actually the things that are the byproduct of anger that you don't even realize or notice that is happening. You hear that? So you're getting angry, you're yelling at this person. Meanwhile, without realizing, your nostrils are flaring. Here? All of us now are in situations when we're stuck in close confines with family for a long time. And it is very easy. It is very easy to make mistakes. It's very easy to lose your temper. It's very easy to raise your voice. Very easy to do a lot of things. Children, it's very easy to be frustrated with parents, because kids, the most natural thing in the world is for them to be out and playing, and now they're cooped up. But we need to focus a little bit on what this means, on the value of recognizing the unseen consequences of our actions. Rav Shalom Shwadron once got up to speak in Zichron Moshe, and he's giving a speech, and all of a sudden he thunders. Shalom Shwadron was a big man. Thunders. He says, because of two people in this shul, someone is not keeping Shabbat. What's the story? Rav Shalom Shwadron would go every Friday together with one of his compatriots. He would walk down the streets of Machne Yehuda, and they would have like a shofar, and they would blow it as as Shabbat was coming. Today, you have all these loudspeakers playing music in Yerushalayim. It's like, galpaz. But back in the day, you needed to blow shofar. So you would go blow shofar, and they would say, Shabbos, Shabbos, Shabbos is coming. And as the stores would hear that Shabbat was coming, they would shutter their doors. At the end of the shuk, there was 4 barbershops. And the first barbershop would close, the second barbershop would close, the third barbershop would close, the fourth barbershop. Every time they would come, he would say, thank you very much, Rabbi, Hazaku Baruch, but thank you very much. You do your business, I'm going to do mine. I'm going to close when the last customer gets here. Okay? All right. A week goes by, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. They can't get through to him. 1 week, they come by, the 3 stores are closing, and they see that the 4th one is already shut before they've even come. So they thought, oh, wow, maybe the guy got very religious. What happened? So they came to the other stores, and they said to them, tell me what's happening here. Where is the guy? They said the guy had a heart attack. He dropped to the floor in his store, and right now he's in the hospital in Bikur Cholim. In old-time Yerushalayim, everything was kind of condensed over there. It's a 10-minute walk from Machane Yehuda to Bikur Cholim. They walked to go visit him in the hospital. They get there, and the guy's sitting there in his bed. Tubes are hooked up to him. He sees the rabbis walk in. He's very emotional. All those weeks that he was, answering them with chutzpah, like, yeah, get lost. You do your thing. I'm doing my thing. I'm not shutting my doors for anybody, et cetera, et cetera. And now here they are visiting him now that he's sick. They said to him, what happened? He says, I don't know. I was in the middle of giving haircuts. I thought I was fine. All of a sudden I felt a pressure in my chest. I just figured I'll just kind of finish my last haircut, and I collapsed, and I woke up here. And they said, well, what are the doctors saying? They said, the doctors are saying it doesn't look good. So the Rav Shalom Shvadron came to me and he said, listen, why don't we make a deal? You decide that you're going to close a store on Shabbat. And in that merit, we will pray for you and we'll give you a beracha that you should get better in the merit of keeping Shabbat, et cetera, et cetera. The guy says, okay, reaches out his hand, gives him a little weak shake. 3 weeks later, the guy has a miraculous recovery. Shabbat comes after 3 weeks. The guy's back in his store. Rav Shalom Shadron comes back. Shabbos, Shabbos, Shabbos. Store number 1 shuts, 2, 3. Comes to the 4th one, and he leans in the door. The guy says, now, okay, shuts the door. He shuts the store down. And it's just like this every week. Week in, week out, week in, week out, week in, week out. 6 months go by. They blow the shofar and store number 1, 2, and 3 shut, but store number 4 says to them, get lost. He says, I'm not closing my store anymore until I serve the last customer. Shabbat, ahin, Shabbat, aher. Shabbat here, Shabbat there, I don't care. They said, what do you mean? He says, I learned it from one of your friends with the beard. What do you mean, one of my friends with the beard? He said, I had yahrzeit this past week for my father. I went to the shtibel, to Zichron Moshe. They told me that there was a minyan to go pray for mincha. So I went there. I got there half hour early. I'm in the zone now. I'm keeping Shabbat. If I'm doing it, I'm going to do it already. I get there 12 o'clock. I'm doing korbanot. I'm reading Mishnah. I'm doing everything. I'm ready to say my Kaddish. As I'm getting ready to say my Kaddish, I see 2 guys come in, long beards. And they're sitting there right in the hallway, right next to the synagogue that we're in. And it comes time to do the silent prayer, the Amidah, and I start to daven, I start to pray. And these guys are out there counting money. They're changing money between each other. One guy's got shekel and one guy's got the dollars, I don't know, whatever. And they're counting 2, 3, 4, 5. And it's like it's messing with my concentration. He goes, I'm new to this whole praying thing. So I turned around and I was like, shh, shh. There's nothing funnier than Jews that can't talk trying to use sounds to communicate. It's a comedy skit that is absolute gold in Jewish homes all around the world after Hamotzi on Shabbat, okay? Back for shh, the guy, leave me alone. Blah, blah, blah. Finally, the guy comes up to them. He says, after the Amidah, after the prayer, he says, look, I see over here on the wall, it says Shulchan Aruch, not to speak during the time of prayer. It says that's the halacha. Don't you guys, you look very religious. Don't you keep the halacha? You should be at least quiet. Aren't you embarrassed to count your money here? What? The guy says to him, the best place to count money is a shul. Who's going to steal my money in a shul? Right? You hearing this? Now, I can't, because it's so powerful. The guy says to Rav Shalom, if that's how religious people relate to halacha, if they could do their business in shul whenever they want, why can't I do my business whenever I want? If they could do their business in shul whenever they want, why can't I do my business whenever I want? Rav Shalom Shwadron thunders. There's two people in this shul who are the reason that someone is open on Shabbat. And he said something that follows. He says the guy's going to die after 120. I mean, I'm sure he's dead now, but he's going to go to Shamayim, and in heaven they're going to say, we're really sorry. We would love to send you to heaven, but you haven't kept Shabbat. What do you mean I haven't kept Shabbat? I kept Shabbat with gefilte fish and with herring. I kept Shabbat with, 3 times Kiddush. I went to, from shul to shul, I went hopping. What do you mean I didn't keep Shabbat? And they're going to say, no, look, your barber store was open. That's on you. That's the power of the unseen. Now, there's a phrase that's called collateral damage. Collateral damage is the damage that happens to other things while we're not paying attention to what we're doing. But in the same way there's collateral damage, there's also collateral benefit. So if all of us are trying to sit here today and figure out, okay, it's clear that there's something being asked of all of us. It's clear that Hashem wants us to learn something here. And I can't ask the rabbi and I can't ask the prophet, but I got to ask myself, what can I do better? What can I do better that will create collateral benefit? Does it mean being nicer? I want to offer a few suggestions. But again, these are just my suggestions. And hopefully it will spark an internal conversation in your own heads. Could we please just agree on this? Stop depressing people more than they are already depressed. Please. If you want to post something positive. Post something that brings people a smile. Yeah? Decide that you're going to call some people who you haven't had time to call and spend a little time on them because now you're stuck at home. That is a positive thing that you could do with this time. A second suggestion, I think they're so simple. All of us, when we go to shul, so we have the opportunity to interact with people. We have the opportunity, to say hello to people, to shake people's hands, to give somebody a hug. If you're Sephardic, on both sides, okay? It's interesting for Ashkenazim, but that's how we do, okay? And suddenly, something has changed. We no longer are able to show our affection in a physical way. We are no longer able to show our love by physical touch or interaction. Can't even be in the same room. That does not mean that it is not possible for us to be able to communicate our love, to show someone that you're worried or you're thinking about them. If you're going to the store, and everybody has to go to the store, hopefully you're not panic buying, but everybody has to go to the store. Think of one person in your neighborhood who's a little old or maybe not so well, and just call and ask them, can I pick up something from you from the store? Simple. That is a way of us figuring out how to break the bonds of Galut. If we know that our Beit HaMikdash was destroyed because of Sinat Kinam, and Mashiach comes when we figure out how to reverse that trend. So even if we don't know why it's here, we do know that this is something that has the key to get us out of it. Because you know what? Mashiach has the cure to coronavirus. That's not going to be a problem. for him. So if we can solve this, then we can solve that. So what is there that you need to do? A young guy reached out to me a couple days ago, and he said to me, Rabbi, what is there that I could do? And I know the guy is really into fitness. So I said to him, a lot of people are offering to go buy things for somebody. A lot of people are offering to go check in on somebody, to see if they're okay in their house. I said, but maybe think of something that you could do that is unique. He says, what do you mean? I said, I know that you love fitness. He goes, I do. I said, well, what if we set you up with a Zoom where there's lots of elderly people stuck in their houses? They're not moving around. That's very bad for their, for their muscles. Have a stretching routine where you could kind of show them how to stretch, how to, move a little bit where they're staying limited. That is something, it's just such a simple thing that someone is capable of doing because that's something that he is good at. There was a woman who came to me a few days ago, and she was telling me about a project that she's doing that involves taking care of elderly people. And this man is an elderly Persian man. He doesn't really say much, doesn't talk a lot. There's one thing he loves to do. He loves to play sheshbesh. He loves to play backgammon. He's at home. His wife's in the hospital. He's by himself. So what'd she do? She found someone to go and play backgammon with him. Today, a person could sit there. We could do this, by the way, all of us. You could set up a camera with a backgammon and do that like that. Amazing. Family, by the way, and building the bonds with family is no less important than building the bonds with other people. Having a Zoom call with your whole family, getting everyone from all the different places around the country or the world where your family is, have a sing-along, have a schmooze together, where everyone is sitting together and just talk. Even these simple things, they create unseen bonds. And I wanna leave you with this responsibility, if I can. I want to leave you with this responsibility to draw together. Our parasha is called Vayakel, and our Chachamim tell us that there's two words. One word is Vayikra, Moshe calls the Jewish people, and one word is Vayakel, Moshe gathered the Jewish people. Those are two separate things. Sometimes you call people together, you command them, you ask them, you convince them to come together, and sometimes Vayakel, something just gathers them. When these people are having these concerts online on Instagram, Simcha Leiner doesn't need to beg you to tune into his concert. Everyone wants to listen to what he has to, how he sings, because he has a beautiful voice. All he needs to do is tell people, I'm going to be on at this time, and then that's it, and that gathers people together. How can we be as people? How can we be people that just being the person that we are gathers people to us, draws people together? I think these questions are fantastic questions for this time. If you've left me some questions or some comments down there, I'll try and respond to them either on Instagram or others. And yes, it will be saved. Thank you so much for listening today. I appreciate that you were all here with us. And Be'ezrat Hashem, we should be zocher. We should merit to find our way out of this and find our way out of Galut, and merit to come together, not just once again in our shuls and in our schools, but in our Bet HaMikdash with the coming of Mashiach b'mehera v'yamenu. Amen.